Israel has announced the delivery of urgent humanitarian aid to Syria's Druze population in Sweda amid ongoing violence and a worsening crisis in the region. The aid package, worth 2 million shekels or nearly $600,000, includes food and medical supplies and comes as tensions escalate following deadly clashes and controversial airstrikes. The Israeli foreign minister said the move was in response to recent attacks targeting the Druze community and was prompted in part by appeals from Israel's own Druze minority. However, Israel denied reports that it carried out fresh overnight strikes in the area, following international backlash over earlier air raids. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that Israel's policy is focused on the demilitarization of a buffer zone from the Golan Heights to the Druze mountain, pledging to protect Druze civilians. Syria's new leadership, described by Israel as barely disguised jihadists, has rejected Israeli claims of humanitarian intent. Syrian President Al-Sharaa, who has cultivated closer ties with the U.S., accused Israel of seeking to fracture Syria and reaffirmed his commitment to safeguarding the Druze population himself. At the UN Security Council, Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kiari condemned Israel's recent strikes on Damascus, saying they violated Syrian sovereignty and undermined peace efforts in an already fragile post-conflict landscape. Let's listen into what Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia and the Pacific, Khalid Kiari, had to say.
Condemnation of all violence against civilians, including all acts that fan the flames of sectarian tensions and rob the people of Syria of their opportunity for peace and reconciliation after 14 years of brutal conflict, citing the violation against the Druze community and pledging to protect them. Between 12 and 16 July, Israel resumed and intensified its airstrikes on Syrian territory. In this respect, I echo the Secretary General's condemnation of Israel's escalatory airstrikes, including on Suwaida, Dar'a, and in the center of the capital, Damascus. The strikes targeted the Damascus authorities' forces and official buildings, including the Ministry of Defense and the vicinity of the Presidential Palace, as well as the Maze military airport. In addition to violating Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, Israel's actions undermine efforts to build a new Syria at peace with itself and the region and further destabilize Syria at a sensitive time. It is essential that both Israel and Syria uphold the terms of 1974 disengagement of forces agreement to preserve the ceasefire between both parties and refrain from any action that will further undermine it and the stability on the Golan.
Israel has announced the delivery of urgent humanitarian aid to Syria's Druze population in Sweda amid ongoing violence and a worsening crisis in the region. The aid package, worth 2 million shekels or nearly $600,000, includes food and medical supplies and comes as tensions escalate following deadly clashes and controversial airstrikes. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said the move was in response to recent attacks targeting the Druze community and was prompted in part by appeals from Israel's own Druze minority. However, Israel denied reports that it carried out fresh overnight strikes in the area following international backlash over earlier air raids. Now we are joined for this discussion by Professor Kobi Michael. He's a senior researcher at the INSS and Misgauk Institute, live from Israel. Thank you, Professor, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. How should we interpret Israel's decision to deliver humanitarian aid to Syria's Druze community? Is it genuine outreach to protect a minority group, or is this a strategic move to build influence?
Hello, thank you for having me. Basically, there are two major reasons to the Israeli, I would say, decision with regard to this area, the Druze mountain or the town of Sweda. The first one is that this area is included in the buffer zone, in the area that Israel perceives as a security zone without any presence of military forces. And therefore, in order to prevent the entrance of military forces, and in order to prevent or to contain, to minimize the activities of some armed militias there, Israel decided to react. The second reason is the commitment that Israel has towards the Druze community. This is, I would say, a historical commitment and a moral commitment. And we have to remember that there are family relations between the community, the Druze community of Sweden and the Druze communities in Israel. They are relatives. And Israel as a state is committed to the Druze community in Israel, and therefore Israel decided to react. And I hope that it will be ended soon without any need for further Israeli reaction.
And Professor, now with Syria's leadership, Ahmed Al-Sharaa accusing Israel of trying to fracture the already fragile country, and also UN condemning recent Israeli airstrikes, could this aid initiative deepen regional polarization or trigger broader international criticizing of Israel?
I would say that it is a bit ridiculous. First of all, Israel has a very solid interest to engage with the Syrian regime and to assure its stability and to reach to some understandings with regard to security matters and even beyond. President Trump said it, and President Trump actually aspires or wants to bring Syria to the framework of the Abrahamic Accords. But in the very same time, Israel has some security concerns with regard to its borders and with regard to its, I would say, interests. And in the very same time, this regime controls only something like 1/3 of the Syrian soil. All the northern part of the Syrian soil is eventually occupied by the Turks, more than 3,000 square kilometers, and most of the eastern part of Syria is not controlled by Al-Jolani, but by the Kurds, by SDF. And the south of Syria, the area of Daraa, which is close to the Israeli border, is not controlled by the Syrian regime as well. And Israel is concerned about this area because this is the closest area to our borders. So to say that Israel eventually causes the fragmentation of Syria, it's something which I assume is a bit ridiculous.
And Professor, you also mentioned that Israel has its own Druze population, and now Syria also has Druze population. Are they related? Are they same Druze population? And how is now internal domestic pressure within Israel shaping foreign policy when it comes to Druze population? Yeah.
There is no doubt that it affects and it influences the Israeli government and the entire Israeli society. We have no time now to elaborate on the historical bonds between the Druze and the Jews in this country, but this historical bond, these historical relations began even before the establishment of the State of Israel. In the pre-State of Israel, we are talking about a bond that has been established since the 30s of the last century. So Israel is very, very committed, and the Druze are considered to be very loyal to the State of Israel, They accept the idea that the state of Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. They are willing to sacrifice their life for the security and for the sake of this Jewish state. They are, I would say, part of the Israeli society. They are very respected by the Israeli society. They are deeply embedded in the Israeli society. And in the very same time, their relatives and their family relations with the Druze in Syria are very critical for them, and Israel cannot ignore that.
Thank you very much, Professor Kobi Michael, for joining us today and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news.